What if the excuse you've been using for years isn't lying to you? It's actually working exactly as it was designed to. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who designed it and how to fire them. Think about that question for a second. Don't answer it. Just let it sit in the back of your mind while you listen. Because if the answer is true, it changes the way you see every missed opportunity you've ever had. Imagine this. You're walking through a dangerous city at night. Every street feels uncertain. Every shadow could hide something waiting to hurt you. So you hire a bodyguard. Someone stronger than you. Someone whose only job is simple: keep you safe. If danger appears, they step in. If someone attacks, they protect you. If a situation looks risky, they pull you away before anything bad happens. For a while, that bodyguard is the best decision you ever made, because protection feels like freedom. But then, something changes. Years pass. The city becomes safer. You become older, smarter, stronger. Yet the bodyguard never changes. Every time you reach for a new street, they grab your shoulder. Not that way. Every time you try opening a new door, it's dangerous. Every time you decide to explore, stay here. Slowly, you stop asking questions. You stop trying new things. You stop noticing that the person standing beside you isn't protecting your life anymore. They're controlling it. And here's the strange part. You don't even realize it happened, because it happened slowly. One small decision at a time. One safe choice after another. One postponed dream after the next. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you promised yourself that this would be different? This semester, I'll study from day one. You believe it. You even organize your desk. You buy fresh notebooks. You make a timetable. For one evening, everything feels possible. Then the first chapter looks harder than expected. Your brain whispers, "I'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow becomes Monday. Monday becomes next week. Before you know it, exams are close enough to scare you, but still far enough to ignore. Suddenly you're telling yourself something that sounds completely reasonable. I work better under pressure. Maybe. Maybe not. But somehow, the book stays closed. Now picture another scene. You decide you're finally going to get in shape. You watch transformation videos. You imagine walking into school or college looking different, more confident, more disciplined. You even lay your workout clothes on the chair before going to bed. Morning arrives. The alarm rings. For one tiny second, you remember exactly why you wanted this. Then another voice speaks. You barely slept. You can start tomorrow. One more day won't matter. You hit snooze. Nothing dramatic happens. No explosion. No punishment. The world keeps spinning, which makes it even easier to repeat tomorrow. Now imagine someone with a business idea. Not some billionaire. Just someone with an idea sitting inside the Notes app on their phone. They've thought about it for months, maybe years. They've watched tutorials. They've researched logos. They've imagined their first customer hundreds of times. Their finger hovers over the button that says post. Then they stop. What if nobody cares? What if people laugh? What if it's not good enough? So they close the app. Not forever. Just for today. At least that's what they tell themselves. Days become weeks. Weeks become months. The idea never dies. It simply stays locked inside their head. Safe. Invisible. Untested. If any of these stories sound familiar, don't worry. You're not unusual. You're not weak. You're not lazy. Something else is happening. Something quieter. Something smarter. Notice something strange about every situation. Nobody forced you to quit. Nobody physically stopped you from opening the book. Nobody locked the gym door. Nobody deleted the business idea. Yet somehow, you stayed exactly where you were. It's almost as if an invisible hand gently guided you away from every uncomfortable step, not by shouting, not by threatening, by sounding reasonable. That's what makes it so dangerous. Real traps don't always look like traps. Sometimes they look like common sense. Sometimes they sound responsible. Sometimes they even sound like your own voice. Think back to being younger. Long before today's goals, long before today's dreams, There was probably a moment when trying something new hurt. Maybe you answered a question in class and everyone laughed. Maybe you failed an exam after believing you'd do well. Maybe you trusted someone who embarrassed you. Maybe you practiced for weeks only to lose anyway. Pain has a strange memory. It doesn't just remember what happened. It remembers how to avoid it happening again. That's why after enough disappointment, your mind starts building invisible rules. Don't raise your hand. Don't risk looking stupid. Don't try unless you're certain. Don't begin unless success is guaranteed. Those rules feel intelligent. After all, they're trying to prevent pain. But prevention can quietly become imprisonment. Imagine hiring a bodyguard after getting robbed once. That makes sense? Imagine keeping that bodyguard forever. Still reasonable. Now imagine the bodyguard refusing to let you leave your own house because outside is too risky. That's no longer protection. That's captivity. Yet this happens every single day. Not with locked doors. With locked decisions, every dream has a gate. Every opportunity asks for uncertainty as the entrance fee. Every meaningful achievement requires walking somewhere that feels unsafe. And every single time, someone steps in front of the gate. Someone tells you this isn't the right day. Someone insists waiting is smarter. Someone promises you'll move later. The strange thing is, you trust them, without question, because they've been with you for years. Long enough that you've forgotten they weren't always there. Long enough that their voice feels identical to yours. Long enough that you stopped asking whether they're helping you or controlling you. Maybe that's why your goals always seem one step away. Not because they're impossible, because every path toward them is quietly redirected. Before you even take the first real step, you think you're making careful decisions? Maybe you're simply following instructions. Instructions you've heard for so long that they feel like facts. And here's the twist. The person who hired that bodyguard, the person who gave them permission to protect you, the person who signed that invisible contract years ago, wasn't your teacher, wasn't your parents, wasn't your friends. It was you. You hired them a long time ago. Back when getting hurt felt unbearable. Back when avoiding embarrassment seemed more important than becoming stronger. Back when survival mattered more than growth. You didn't know the contract would never expire. You didn't know that bodyguard would forget the difference between danger and possibility. But now that raises an uncomfortable question. If you hired them, can you actually fire them? Or has your own protector already become the one holding the keys to your cage? Remember the question from the beginning? What if the excuse you've been using for years isn't lying to you, it's actually working exactly as it was designed to? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who designed it and how to fire them. You still don't have the answer. Not yet. But now you know there's a bodyguard standing between you and the life you keep imagining. The real question is this: how does a bodyguard keep control without you noticing? Simple. It never gives orders. It gives suggestions. That's why it sounds so convincing. It never says, don't chase your dream. Instead, it whispers, not yet. It never says, stay average. It says, wait until you're fully prepared. It never says, be afraid. It says, be realistic. Listen carefully to that voice, because you've heard it hundreds of times, maybe thousands. You wake up early with the intention of studying. The book is open. The pen is in your hand. Then the bodyguard quietly steps beside you. You didn't sleep well. You won't remember anything today. Start tomorrow when your mind is fresh. Reasonable. Very reasonable. So reasonable that you never question it. Tomorrow arrives. The same bodyguard is waiting. This chapter is too difficult. Watch one video first. You need motivation before you begin. Hours disappear. Nothing begins. The bodyguard smiles. Not because you failed, because you stayed safe. The same thing happens in the gym. You don't hear. Become weak. You hear? Your muscles still hurt. You deserve one more rest day. You'll work harder next week. Again. Nothing sounds dangerous. Nothing sounds destructive. Everything sounds sensible. That's why the bodyguard is so effective. It doesn't protect you from failure. It protects you from the possibility of failure. There's a difference. Failure teaches. Possibility terrifies. Because possibility asks you to risk your identity. What if you try your hardest and still aren't enough? The bodyguard knows that's the question you fear most. So it answers before life gets the chance. It isn't the right time. And just like that, you never have to find out. Then there are comparisons. The bodyguard loves comparisons. It points at someone more talented, someone richer, someone more experienced, someone who started 5 years earlier. Then it quietly says, they have advantages you don't. You should wait until your situation improves. Your time will come. Maybe. But notice what always happens. Your future becomes a waiting room. You sit there year after year, watching opportunity walk past the window, convinced you're being patient, when you're actually being parked. Here's something most people never notice. The bodyguard doesn't need to win every argument. It only needs to delay you one day at a time. Because one day repeated often enough becomes a lifetime. Think about that. Almost nobody decides to waste 10 years. They simply postpone one afternoon. Again, and again, and again. The bodyguard understands mathematics better than you do. It knows tiny delays create enormous distances. Now let me tell you a story. Not about a famous billionaire. Not about an athlete. Just about someone named Adam. Adam wanted to build a small online business. Nothing huge. He didn't dream about becoming the richest person alive. He simply wanted freedom. Every evening after work, he opened his laptop. Every evening, he found another reason to close it. I need a better logo. I should learn more first. The market is crowded. What if nobody buys? Weeks passed. His folder filled with ideas. His bank account stayed exactly the same. One night, something unusual happened. Adam looked at the notebook where he'd written plans for nearly 2 years. Every page contained another strategy, another improvement, another delay. He suddenly asked himself one question. If I'm always preparing, when exactly does preparation end? Silence. No answer came. For the first time, the bodyguard had nothing intelligent to say. So Adam made a decision, not a huge one. He didn't quit his job. He didn't borrow money. He didn't announce his dream online. He simply published the smallest version of his idea. One imperfect post? That's all. Do you know what happened next? Nothing spectacular. No thousands of followers. No overnight success. No life-changing phone call. Actually, someone criticized it. Someone ignored it. Someone scrolled past without caring. Exactly the things Adam had feared. But something unexpected happened too. He woke up the next morning. Still alive? Still breathing? Still capable of trying again? The bodyguard had promised disaster. Reality delivered discomfort. Those aren't the same thing. The second post became easier. The third became better. Months later, Adam wasn't extraordinary. He was simply moving, while everyone waiting for the perfect moment remained exactly where they started. That was the difference. Movement, not perfection. Your bodyguard wants perfection because perfection never arrives. Life rewards movement because movement creates experience. Every mistake teaches something preparation never can. Every awkward beginning removes a little fear. Every imperfect attempt weakens the bodyguard's authority, and that's why it fights so hard before you begin. It knows something you often forget. Once you take the first real step, its voice becomes quieter. Because evidence is stronger than imagination. You stop wondering whether you can survive failure. You already have. You stop wondering whether embarrassment will destroy you. It didn't. The bodyguard loses power every time reality contradicts its warnings. That's why your first action matters more than your first result. But don't misunderstand this. Firing the bodyguard isn't as simple as saying, "I'll be confident now." Confidence isn't the price. There's another cost. A higher one. The moment you stop listening to the bodyguard, you lose something that has protected you for years. You lose certainty. you lose guarantees. You lose the comforting story that failure only happened because you never truly tried. Because once you step forward with everything you've got, you can no longer hide behind maybe. That's terrifying. And that's exactly why so many people keep the bodyguard employed. Not because it makes them happy, because it makes them feel safe. But safety has a hidden price tag. It quietly collects your unused potential. One postponed dream at a time, one unwritten page, one unopened book, one missed opportunity, one silent decision. Until one day, you look back and realize the biggest thing you ever lost wasn't money, wasn't time. It was the version of yourself that never got the chance to exist. So now the question changes. You already know the bodyguard can be fired, but are you willing to pay the price? Because in the next part, you'll finally discover who designed this bodyguard in the first place, why it has followed you for so many years, and the one action you can take today to dismiss it for good. Remember the question you heard at the very beginning? What if the excuse you've been using for years isn't lying to you? It's actually working exactly as it was designed to. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who designed it and how to fire them. You know the answer now? The bodyguard was designed by you, not the person you are today. The younger version of you, the version that got hurt, the version that failed, the version that felt embarrassed, the version that discovered something painful. If you don't try, you can't fail. If you don't speak, nobody can laugh at you. If you don't start, nobody can judge your beginning. If you don't chase the opportunity, you never have to discover whether you were good enough. So you hired protection. You built a system inside yourself, and it worked. Every time you stayed silent, it protected you from embarrassment. Every time you avoided the exam preparation, it protected you from confronting how far behind you were. Every time you didn't walk into the gym, it protected you from feeling weak. Every time you didn't publish your idea, it protected you from criticism. The bodyguard kept its promise. It kept you safe. But here's the problem. You are not that younger version of yourself anymore. The danger changed. Your life changed. Your abilities changed. But the contract remained. And now the same bodyguard that once protected you from pain is protecting you from growth. That's the truth. Your excuse isn't always a lie. Sometimes it's an old survival strategy. It learned what scared you. Then it learned how to keep you away from it. And eventually, you stop noticing the difference between protection and limitation. That's why telling yourself to stop making excuses isn't enough. You have to understand what the excuse is doing. When your mind says, "You're not ready," don't immediately believe it. Ask, "What am I afraid will happen if I begin?" When it says, "This isn't the right time," ask, "What exactly am I waiting for?" When it says, "Other people have it easier," ask, "Does that change what I can do today?" When it says, "I'll start tomorrow," ask the most dangerous question of all. Why not today? Not because tomorrow is impossible, because tomorrow is the bodyguard's favorite hiding place. Tomorrow doesn't require action. Tomorrow doesn't require courage. Tomorrow doesn't expose you to failure. Tomorrow feels safe, and that's exactly why you need to be careful with it. You can spend years preparing to become someone who finally begins. But preparation has a limit. At some point, you have to move. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Not next Monday. Not when you feel motivated. In the next 10 minutes, take your phone, open the Notes app. Write down one thing you've been delaying because you're afraid, uncomfortable, or uncertain. 1. Not 10. Not your entire life. Just one. Maybe it's studying for an exam. Maybe it's applying for something. Maybe it's starting a project. Maybe it's exercising. Maybe it's learning a skill. Maybe it's sending a message you've been avoiding. Write it down. Then, underneath it, write, "What is the smallest physical action I can take right now?" Not the final goal, the smallest action. If you've been avoiding studying, don't promise to study for 5 hours. Open the chapter. Read one page. If you've been avoiding exercise, don't promise to transform your body. Put your shoes on. Do 10 push-ups. If you've been avoiding your business idea, don't build the entire business. Create the first post. If you've been avoiding learning a skill, don't finish an entire course. Watch the first lesson and take 3 notes. Make the action so small that your bodyguard has almost nothing to argue with. Then, do it immediately. Not after another video. Not after checking social media. Not after making the perfect plan. Immediately. Because you're not trying to finish your dream in 10 minutes. You're doing something much more important. You're showing your brain that the bodyguard no longer has complete authority. You're creating evidence. Evidence that you can hear the voice and move anyway. That's how you weaken it. Not with a speech. With proof. Every time you act despite uncertainty, the bodyguard loses a little power. Every time you start before feeling ready, it gets quieter. Every time you survive an imperfect attempt, its warnings become less believable. And eventually, you realize something. The door was never locked. You just kept listening to the person standing in front of it. That's the cruelest part. You may have spent years blaming your circumstances, your school, your parents, your teachers, your lack of money, your lack of connections, your lack of confidence. And sometimes those things genuinely make life harder. You shouldn't pretend they don't, but difficulty isn't the same as impossibility. You don't need a perfect life to take an imperfect step. You don't need confidence before action. Sometimes confidence is what comes after action. You don't need to know exactly where the road ends. You need enough courage to take the next few meters. Because your bodyguard wants a guarantee. Life doesn't give guarantees. Your bodyguard wants certainty. Life gives probabilities. Your bodyguard wants you to know you'll succeed before you begin. Life asks you to begin before you know. That's the cost. You have to give up certainty. You have to risk embarrassment. You have to risk being bad at something. You have to risk discovering that your first attempt wasn't good enough. But that's not failure. That's the price of becoming someone capable of doing better. Think about Adam from the previous part. The first post didn't make him successful. It didn't magically change his life. It simply broke the spell. He discovered that the thing he'd feared for 2 years wasn't as powerful as he imagined. That's what your first step can do. It can turn a monster into a problem. A problem can be solved. A monster can control you. And once you start moving, you begin seeing the difference. Maybe you've spent years saying, "I'm not disciplined." Maybe you're not. But discipline isn't something you need to possess before you act. It's something you build by acting. Maybe you've spent years saying, "I'm not confident." Fine. Then stop waiting to feel confident. Do something that requires confidence while you're still afraid. Maybe you've spent years saying, "I'm not ready." Maybe you're right. You might not be ready, but you can still begin. Because readiness isn't always a feeling. Sometimes readiness is simply deciding that being unprepared is no longer an excuse to remain still. Your bodyguard will probably never disappear completely. That's important. Don't expect some magical morning where fear never speaks again. It may always knock. It may always whisper. You could fail. You could look stupid. You could lose. You could regret this. Let it speak. You don't need to destroy the voice. You just need to stop giving it the keys. Fear can sit in the passenger seat. It just doesn't get to drive. And when the voice says, "Don't do it," you can answer, "Maybe," then do it anyway. When it says, "You're not ready," you can answer, "Probably not," then begin anyway. When it says, "What if you fail?" you can answer, "Then I'll learn," and take the next step. That's what firing the bodyguard really means. It doesn't mean becoming fearless. It means becoming the person who decides what happens next. You hired that bodyguard years ago. You hired it when you were trying to survive embarrassment. You hired it when failure felt like the end of the world. You hired it when protecting your ego felt more important than expanding your life. And maybe you needed it then. But you don't have to keep paying its salary forever. The contract has expired. The keys belong to you again. So when this video ends, don't just feel motivated. Don't save it for later. Don't tell yourself you'll remember this tomorrow. Do the 10-minute action. Open the book, Write the first sentence. Put on the shoes. Send the message. Publish the post. Take the first step. Whatever your version is, do it. Because the most dangerous sentence in your life might not be, "I can't." It might be, "I'll do it later." Later feels harmless, but years are built from harmless delays. So fire the bodyguard. Not because it was evil, not because it never helped you, but because its job is finished. It protected the younger version of you. Now you have to protect the future version of you. And that future version is waiting on the other side of one uncomfortable decision. So go make it. The door is open. The bodyguard is no longer in charge. And this time, when fear tells you to stay where you are, don't argue with it. Just walk past it.